Whether or not you consider wrestling to be a sport, it's undeniable that the Smackdown vs. Raw series comes with more than its fair share of sports game trappings. The yearly release schedule practically guarantees that any improvements will be slight, but that doesn't mean that we can't expect more.
It's up to you to make an impact!
It's time for WWE Smackdown vs. Raw 2008 to make its big entrance, but can it break the chokehold of uninspired sequels? Smackdown vs. Raw 2008 returns this year with a good helping of past and present wrestlers, modes, and match types that have made the series popular with wrestling and video game fans alike. Exhibition Mode is one of the game's main pit stops, where players can customize and participate in events running the gamut from simple one-on-one confrontations to fatal four-ways, handicap, steel cage, ladder, and money matches.
This superstar is all fired up!
ECW wrestlers like CM Punk flesh out the usual exhaustive WWE roster, and a handful of new weapons, arenas, announcers, and modes, like the new ECW Extreme Rules match, add some flair to the standard Raw and SmackDown provisions. These new modes, as well as all of the existing standbys, can also all be played online through the PlayStation Network and Xbox Live. The true appeal of the series, however, lies in the staple character customization mode. In 08, the Wrestler and General Manager modes of last year have been consolidated into one feature dubbed 24/7 mode. Here, you build up a wrestler or GM from scratch with the goal of climbing the food chain and appeasing the big cheese himself, Vince McMahon.
This is what you want, isn't it?
The GM option, which is essentially a fantasy sports simulation, is still a bore to play, but the 24/7 Create a Wrestler mode is an interesting diversion from the standard pre-packaged fights in Exhibition mode. Rather than progressing through a linear path, you go through a daily simulation of events, which can range from training in the ring to making public appearances to bolster your fandom and stat points. The idea of building a daily regimen is nice, but instead of doing short mini-games, you end up participating in repetitive sets of pseudo-matches with requirements like pulling off as many running attacks as possible. As the days pass, key storyline events begin to form centering on your wrestler. Early on, you'll catch heat from the rest of your roster for being the resident newbie, sending you into a match to prove your worth. Little story-driven segments like this spice up the experience, but the effect is demolished by poor-planned scripted events. One day, you get an irate voicemail,
I'm looking forward to proving just how little respect I have for you.
and the next, you're in a friendly backstage cutscene with the same guy. Being able to customize a wrestler down to the size of the ridge on his nose is a pleasing diversion, but 24/7 mode's execution is too underdeveloped to support its ambitious goals. Stagnant exercises and non-sequitur storylines are clear signs that the developers simply ran out of time. The buttons may have played a bit of musical chairs over the years, but for the most part, Smackdown vs. Raw 2008's control scheme has remained relatively intact. Physical strikes, Irish whips, reversals, and varying levels of grappling are still key facets of the game, with grappling, in particular, retaining the refurbished right analog stick scheme from 07. The most notable additions this year are the superstar fighting styles, which can almost be described as character classes from RPGs. Dirty wrestlers, for instance, are the rogues of the game, immoral fighters specializing in breaking rules, from using the referee as a shield to ignoring rope breaks during submission maneuvers. If you're down with pixies, then rolling an agile high flyer is probably your best bet. With these styles, wrestlers have a lot more individual defining characteristics this time around, and on a gameplay level, they add a crucial element to wrestler selection depending on the match. Submission matches cater towards submission-based wrestlers, while larger Royal Rumble-type outings favor the beefier wrestlers on the roster. As the most significant addition this year, the superstar fighting styles do well to add dimension to the game's aging system. The other new addition to speak of this year is the struggle submission system. During submissions, players have to rotate the right analog stick to prolong the wrenching. Though the superstar fighting styles and struggle submission system add some new tricks up Smackdown vs. Raw's sleeve, a lot of the old problems are still lingering. Clipping and poor collision detection are still big issues, and the game's balance could definitely use some tweaking. Just when you think you're unloading a can of whoop-ass, the computer bounces back with a meager reversal that leaves your grappler panting for dear life. Granted, it's professional wrestling, but when playing video games, the winner isn't supposed to be predetermined.
I'm not so sure this is a good idea!
Targeting, which has moved on from a manual command to an automatic function, is also a bothersome issue this year. In matches with more than two wrestlers, trying to pinpoint a specific opponent can get to be a hassle. Even referees end up being collateral damage at some point. While clotheslining a referee may give you a chuckle or two at first,
Whoa, there goes the referee.
not being able to hit your target for the umpteenth time and trying to work around the game's various quirks loses its flavor quickly. Being a wrestling game, most of the system's graphical resources are allocated towards each wrestler's character model and animation. Randy Orton's devil-may-care strut down the catwalk and Triple H's trademark turnbuckle entrance are both nailed, but the overall visual package is uneven. Some wrestlers look like plastic action figures, and a good percentage of the animations this year have been recycled from last year. On top of that, a substantial difference of quality still exists between the wrestlers and the crowd.
Ew! What's wrong with you?
Get away from her!
The game's audio is all over the place. While the color commentary can be funny, drawn-out matches will see the regurgitation of certain phrases.
I've said it before and I'll say it again. Nothing costs you a match quicker than overconfidence.
I think these fans know what's coming next!
Your time is up, my time is now. You can't see me, my time is now.
The inclusion of superstar fighting styles in the struggle submission system is a step in the right direction, but it's still difficult to recommend SmackDown vs. Raw 2008 for a purchase to anyone but the most ardent fan. The series and the genre in general just hasn't changed much over the past decade. Yet SmackDown vs. Raw 08 still exhibits issues that have plagued it for years.
Look at him go!
Don't let this one body slam your wallet.